Hi guys! Today we're going to work on how to draw the human face number 2. So we did the eyes and the eyebrows. Now we're going to work on the nose and the mouth. We're going to use basic shapes to create guidelines. We're going to use shading to create value to make it look more 3D versus 2D so it's not flat. And we're going to need a number 2 pencil or artist pencils, which is what I will be using. You need a blending stick. If you don't have an artist blending stick, you can use a Q-tip, you could use a tightly wadded up Kleenex, you can use your own finger as long as they're not oily or have lotion on them, because that can mess up your artwork. Oh, and an eraser, because we're gonna erase some of our guidelines, and plus, you know, sometimes you just gotta erase things, or at least I do. So let's get started on the nose and the mouth. Woo! Okay. So when you're drawing the human nose, you kind of look for 3 basic circles within the nose. Sometimes the one in the center could actually be more of an oval shape, but you're going to look for the first one here. I'm just going to go ahead and draw it on here. The first one here. Then you're going to look for one right here that overlaps and one right here that overlaps. So you're looking for 3 circles. Sometimes the nostril circles, which are the 2 smaller ones, are a little lower. Sometimes this one is a lot bigger, depending on if it's male, female, and what shape of nose they have. So you're always going to want to look at a black and white. I prefer black and white because I can see my values in there because I'm using graphite. I'm going to look at my picture and go, okay, where's the basic shapes of that nose? What size are they? Where are they placed? And go from there. So if I was going to draw, I'm going to try to draw this big for you guys so you can see it, but I'm going to go with a basic shape, a basic circle, and then I'm going to do 2 smaller circles that overlap the bottom half on the sides of my big circle. You're going to end up erasing some of this because you don't want to keep those shapes complete the whole time. If you did, it would look kind of funny. So this is just guidelines. And then you'd put in the nostrils. And I just do an arch upward where I think the top arch of the nostril would be, and one on the other side. And then I'm going to go in and I'm going to lightly erase where my circle's connected and the top of my big circle. And then I'm going to take, this is a 6B artist pencil, but you can use your 2B number 2 pencil, or if you have artist pencils, you'll want to use one of the higher numbers of B because they're a little softer. It works good for shading and blending, and so that's what I'm going to do. If the light on this picture was hitting her just straight like this, and usually on a photograph it's going to come straight like this, or at a slight angle this way, or slight angle this way. If it's angled this way, it's going to be brighter on this side, getting darker on this side of the nose. If it's aiming this way, it's going to be brighter on this side of the nose, getting darker on that side. But because it's pretty much a straight on amount of light on her, which this is Audrey Hepburn, you would have it being brighter through here and going off darker in the shadows and darker in the shadows underneath. And that's pretty much typical for any nose that you're going to do. And it's a good way to set up your model, or find a photograph that you want to use. I would look for one that has the light coming straight at them, or on one angle at a 45 this way, or angled at a 45 this way towards their face. It's going to make it easier for you to get the values of the nose right. But in the nose, there's always going to be, you never draw the lines going up. That is always just shading in, and it ends up going up to the eye, which I'm not going to put the eyes in, but you get the idea, and shading down. A lot of times it's often darker on one side of the nose than the other, or vice versa. I was pointing to which one, but it didn't really make sense. Okay, now I'm going to lightly shade. Ooh, I don't like that. I'm going to lightly shade. I'm going to erase those lines. Got a little choppy right there. Okay, I'm going to lightly shade right here because your nose goes up and then as it comes down and then curves out to the nostrils, there is a little indentation there. And the only way to get that to show is to have a little bit of shading or a light value put in there. Then it's usually darker underneath the nose. There's even generally a little bit of a cast shadow from the nose underneath it. Don't worry, it'll get better, I hope. Inside the nose here, it's generally, in the nostril, it's generally darker. A lot of times it's darker on one nostril than the other. Or it might be a bigger amount that is filled in. It's not always perfectly visible, the same amount under each each nostril. So I'm gonna go ahead and do this. And I brought these circles down a little further than I feel like they should go. So I'm gonna move them up just a little. Shading around the edges of the nose here. And I like to turn my paper when I shade, also because I have a camera in front of me, so I kind of have to turn my paper when I shade. But generally I like doing it that way anyway. I'm not going to talk a whole lot because there's just shading going up sides of the nose, kind of around that bulbous area a little bit. Shading up, going up the side of the nose. It usually gets a little darker in the eye, where the eyes are. Generally, it's not perfectly shaded all the way up like this either, and I'm gonna make some adjustments. I'm gonna use my handy dandy blending stump. You can use a Q-tip or a wadded up piece of tissue. You can try using just your finger. I like using a blending stump, especially when I use graphite. If I was doing this in charcoal, which is my preferred way to do the human face, I'd probably just be using my finger. But I want the values to slowly transition from lighter to darker, so I don't want them to be this perfect line and then perfect white here, so I have to use something to blend and pull color. I could sit and do it with my pencil. It just takes a lot longer and I'm not very patient, so I tend to use a blending stump and pull color where I want it to go. Okay, so I'm gonna end up getting rid of this a little bit. It's a little bit too dark up there. I feel like this needs to be thinned out as well because I don't want two solid lines. Sometimes you do. You just got to look at what your picture is. And there's definitely going to be a highlight spot on the nose, so I need to pull that back out a little bit. And because I have a lot of graphite on my blending stump already, that's not a lot, I have a little bit, but it's just enough that I can go in and do what I need to do without even having to pick my pencil back up again, which always is kind of fun. Makes it a little nicer for me anyway. And I want to get a little bit of color in here, but not a lot, because that's where the sun is hitting, or the flash, and there's a highlight right along that bridge and on the tip of the nose. Sometimes even the nostrils might have a slight light, especially if it's coming in an angle this way or this way, then that certain nostril would have light on it. I'm gonna go in here, darken this up just a little bit. This isn't anybody's nose in particular. I'm just kind of creating a general nose for you to see how it works. I even use my blending stump in a circular motion, especially if I've got a little bit of a line effect going with my shading because my pencil was so sharp, because I just sharpened it, so it kind of put some lines in there. Normally I'd go in and carefully erase those lines, just go in there and pull those lines out and then fade it back in together with my blending stump, because I don't want those weird stripes down the side. But for time's sake and for just being a lesson, I'm not gonna sit and make it perfection. Because like I said, whenever I work on stuff, especially the human face, I could be here for hours and hours and hours just readjusting it. Whenever you're working on a human face too, you always want to like take a moment, step back and look at it from a distance and then come back to it, and look at it from a distance and come back to it. Because when you're looking at it straight on like this, it can get kind of confusing. So that's just kind of a general nose. I'm going to go ahead and move on to the lips. And so, and I might keep messing with that a little bit, but that just kind of gives you an idea how to do the nose and make it look from 2D to 3D, a little bit more realistic. And we'll come back and start working on the lips. Okay, so now we're going to start working on the lips. So when you're doing the lips, everybody's lips come in different shapes and sizes. So I'm just going to kind of create a basic lip here. There is usually a slight indentation that shows up between the tip of the nose, underneath the tip of the nose, to the top of the lip. So I would just kind of put that in real lightly. Hopefully you guys can see that, because I don't want to do it too dark, but I'd even do it lighter than that normally. To give myself, okay, that's where my center is, my center line through there, okay. Now with the lips, I'm going to turn my paper because that's just how I draw. You're always going to start off with an oval, and then a bigger circle or oval. Now this is going to change depending on what the shape of your mouth is. And I can see that I already have my mouth crooked, so I'm going to erase that and try that one more time. So what happens when you turn your page? You guys might want to draw it straight on. I just naturally want to draw at this angle, so it tends to take me a second to get it where I want it to be. Okay, that's a little bit better. Okay, so you have your basic shapes of the ovals. Sometimes if they have really big poofy lips, it may be closer to a circle shape. It probably won't be a perfect circle, but it'll probably be a wider oval. So you have your two small top ones and then a big one on the bottom. It's generally how most lips go. And then I would just go in and kind of sketch out the shape of the upper lip. I might even do it in perfectly straight lines to start. And a straight line, and a straight line. And then I want to look and see, where do the lips come to? Generally, if you had eyes already on your drawing, I'll show you on here. The nose, generally, the corners of the nose generally come in line with the corners of the mouth. Doot, 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 doot. Okay, the corners of the mouth generally come in line with the corner of the iris if you're looking straight ahead. Doot, 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 like that. Hopefully you guys can see those little dot, dot, dot lines and didn't just hear my little doot, doot, doot and saw nothing. Looks like she's crying in some weird way. Okay, so that's generally where they go. And then the space in between here and here can vary a little. Same with here and here, depending on who the person is, what they look like, and their features. So I'm gonna try to kind of visualize and pretend that my eye is probably, or iris is probably there, and maybe it's like right there. So I'm not in line. Okay, so I need to make the mouth a little bit bigger. So I'm gonna erase it. I'm gonna make my original ovals a little bit bigger. I feel like I'm not getting them centered. And then I'm gonna make my other oval a little bigger. And now I'm going to work on the basic outline, straight line. I'm just gonna do it in straight lines. And let's see if I can get it to the right width, or at least close. That's close. We won't worry about getting it perfect today. Okay, now that I have that, I'm going to kind of just lightly erase the inside circles in there. I don't need them as much. I do want to kind of start to shape this out a little bit and make it a little less squared off in my points. And then I'm gonna kind of eyeball a line through the center just for now. And then I'm gonna work on shading it. So again, it's always good to work, if you're gonna shade this in charcoal or graphite pencils, you're gonna want to have a black and white picture to look at so you can get the values correct. And you want to think about how the curves of the lips go. They kind of curve outward and then outward on this side. Kind of goes like this. And then as you come in, I'd get a little lighter because there's usually going to be a highlight point somewhere on the lips. And generally, if it's straight on light, it's going to be a straight on, probably on the bottom. It might be a little bit on the top one as well. And then get darker as it goes out a little bit. I rarely do anything in shading that is a straight, perfect, solid line. Which I mean by that is like outlining, because the lips, you know, I mean, I guess it depends on the picture. There may be somebody with some lip liner on and it looks like they're outlined, and then you can try to make that happen. But generally, you wouldn't have, things aren't outlined when you're doing art. They are just different values. And so you wouldn't want to have it be this perfect outlined thing. You'd want it to have a change and be soft. And there would be even be value in here, value in here. And then I feel like I need to get some more lights in there. I would use a different eraser, but unfortunately my camera is blocking my drawer to get my other eraser out. So I'm gonna try to make it work with this one. But there are lots of different types of erasers. You know, in this particular situation, I would probably use like a gummy eraser. They're kind of stretchy. Oh, I have one. I have a brand new one right here. A kneaded eraser. Sorry, I forget what these things are called often. They're a kneaded eraser, and they come just like that, and then usually they even have another layer over them like this, because it is like, almost like, feels like clay. Some of you, if you've taken classes from me, probably have seen them before. Maybe even got the opportunity to use them. Okay, now it's stuck to my finger. Hold on, bear with me. Sorry, it's fun. Okay, and now the other one's stuck to my finger. Okay, so it's almost like clay. See, you just mush it around, make it into a pretty ball. It's fun to play with. It's a great de-stressor. That's just fun. But anyway, so I usually like shape it to like something like that kind of a shape. And I go in and just start pulling out some of my highlights. The thing I like about this is when you get the graphite, or if you're using charcoal and it starts getting it onto the kneaded eraser, you just squish it around a little bit, make it go away, and you got a clean eraser again. Because as some of you may know, when your eraser starts getting dirty and you try to erase something, it will smear, it will leave some of the color pigment behind. It's just super annoying. So yeah, that's one that I like. I pulled a little too much, so I'm going to go back in. I'm going to use, I think this is my 6B pencil again. Like I said, this isn't my strong point, has never been the human face. I think it could be if I practiced more. It's one of those things that you just gotta practice. But that's true with everything in life. The more you practice, the better you get. And art is definitely one of those things. Okay. So again, I could keep going. going. We could be here all day watching me try to shade in the values, change it, change the shape. But I think you get the idea, so I'm gonna stop. Yeah, that's kind of a basic mouth and nose, and we did the eye. Hopefully if you didn't see the eye one, do the eye, go back and do the eye. The next we will do how to get the basic shape of the head and how to do the ears. And most of what I'm showing you is all straight on, straightforward. That's how I suggest you initially start drawing portraits. It's a lot easier because then you don't have to worry about proportion and angles just yet. So I'd start off with straight on and start off with a black and white and just practice. Just practice doing noses, mouths, eyes, ears. Do that for a little while before you start taking on the whole thing. So I hope you had fun. I hope you learned a little something. If you have any questions, post them in the comments. Post your pictures in the comments. I'd love to see them. And so I'll see you next time.